what we want to show you today is some of the updates we've made to AIMS 3. I'm going to do this one maybe a little bit differently. I'm going to focus more on workflow improvements versus just showing off functionality. Most CMMS systems perform roughly the same functions, so it's really the intricacies that help you do your daily work that will help you choose one over another. So today I want to focus on that. We're going to start here. Before we log in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about AIMS 3 and the foundation of what we've built here. So number one, what we wanted to do was make it browser agnostic. So you're going to see today that we're working in Google Chrome. That's my browser of preference. This will work equally as well in any modern browser, Edge, Firefox, Opera, Safari. It really shouldn't matter which browser you're using. This should work very well in that. On top of that, because it works in any browser, it actually works on any device. So if we look over here, this is kind of what it's going to look like if you were to bring this up on a tablet. So whether you use it portrait or landscape, it's going to move the fields around. You're still going to be able to see everything on screen, and it's the full system. This isn't a limited system. You can only do certain functions. If you pull this site up on any mobile device, you have the full capabilities of the software. So anything you can do inside of AIMS, including running reports, you can also do from a phone or a tablet. So you get some advantages just with being browser and device agnostic. We also have a full system-wide audit trail. We're not going to look at that today. It would be probably a little boring to look at in a demo, but the full system-wide audit trail, any change you make on any screen, any table is going to track. That includes the initial creation and deletion of the record, because if I immediately create something and accidentally delete it, we still have it fully audited. The last thing is there are no character or length restrictions. Our software is actually used in 19 countries, and not all of them are English-speaking countries as the native language. Our software can work in any language in the world, including traditional Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Thai, what they speak in Thailand and Vietnam. Any of those languages also work in our system. Because of that, we can't have any restrictions. So you're not going to run into length problems or any special characters that aren't allowed in any field in the entire system. That also means, as we sign in here, any label that you don't necessarily like, you can also change. So if we can change to another language, you can obviously change it to another word in English. So it's a fully customizable system in that regard. Now, one of the neat things about logging in here is I immediately get some information that is very useful to me. So I can see my PM completion. I'm logged in as a manager at this point, so I can see my entire team. I can see that I have some non-PMs sorted by priority, so I have some urgent work orders I can look at. And then especially for admins, but useful for everyone, we have charts like frequently used macros. So these are reports that I run constantly. I can, with the simple click of the button, go to this report and run it, and I don't have to go set anything up. Just one click the run button, and we're at our report. So it's very handy. You can also filter these, so I can look at just one facility or another. I can filter it down to just one team member maybe if I want to do that. So as you can see, as I click through these things, it's going to auto refresh. So this home screen is very, very important to everyone's workflow. It's where techs are going to come back. This is their work order log. So if I'm a tech, I'm only going to see things that are assigned to me or my team. We'll talk about teams in a little bit. As a manager, if I want to drill down, because frequently that's needed, I have these 8 urgent work orders. I want to make sure they're being worked on. If I simply click on this, it's going to filter this next chart to only show those urgent work orders. From there, I can one-click export that. I can go visit any one of these, so I can jump right to one of these records. It'll take me to this record, and I can now start to make sure someone's assigned. I can make sure that it's actively being worked on, maybe call the department if I need to. So just with a couple clicks, as soon as I log in, I'm looking at my list and details of my urgent work orders. There are other charts that are included on this if you want to turn them on. So there's a handful of charts in here. These are kind of pre-built. They're ones that we've included. For instance, there's a log here of any work order that comes in through EasyNet. That's our web request system. So anything submitted from your clinical staff on the floor, you can track those in a log. If you're one of those shops that has a big TV up in the shop and you have all the incoming work orders up there so people know to go grab them, you can actually take this and pop it out just like this one. You can pop it out to its own window, make it go full screen, and have that up on your monitor in the shop, and everyone can see new things as they come in. Every single one of these grids throughout the system auto refreshes. So as those work orders are submitted, it's going to refresh. They'll be able to see them real time, full screen up on the TV in your shop. If you don't work that way and someone else monitors it, they would just add it to their home screen here and monitor it that way. And lastly, these can also be dragged around. So if you want your work list up top, as most techs probably would, managers probably would want the charts, techs would probably want this, you can click and drag these things around and it'll just change the whole screen up however you want to change these charts around. So the whole thing's fairly customizable, very, very easy to do, and extremely useful. The information on it is extremely important. Next, over in equipment, we want to show some of the improvements here. So again, standard equipment information, to go through all that in a demo is probably not necessary, but some of the things that you'll notice right away that are probably different are we have these informational messages right up top. So the second I hit this, I know it's under contract, I know it's under warranty, we've marked it as critical equipment or a system, and it is marked down on some work order somewhere. I also have a picture of it. This could be any picture, might be the nameplate, might be a picture of the device. It's whatever you want to be your default image that shows up there. And it's just very useful information. So as we go through the tabs here, this is standard admin information, who's it assigned to, who's going to take care of it. If you have a vendor coming in, you can handle all of that. Where is it located, of course. Over here on lifecycle, we try to do full lifecycle management. So from purchase through end of life, end of support is all tracked on here. So as you get those end of support messages, obviously you don't want to go to every equipment and add them. You would typically add those at the model level and they'll pull down automatically. So you get an end of sale or an end of support notice from a vendor, you add it at the model level, it pulls down to all of your equipment. Risk setup, a fully customizable screen. So this is kind of a standard risk. There's a lot of people maybe moving away from this or moving away from risk in general just because of the regulations that have come out over the last few years of 100% compliance. But if you still use this, you still use it for various things, we can handle whatever you have. So if you have less than 5 fields, more than 5 fields, a completely different formula, we handle all of that. We can split it by different, what we call service departments. You'll see the word service department. That's like clinical, facilities, radiology. Our term for those is service department. So each one of those obviously has unique risks. Facilities and clinical or biomed don't share the same set of risk fields that they care about. So based on what you choose here, it'll rearrange the entire screen to fit whatever the need is for that type of equipment. History log, fairly simple, tracks all the work orders, shows you hours and who's assigned. It shows you if you have any open PMs, when your next PM is due, and when your last closed PM is. And then you can click on those and jump right to those work orders as well. Most importantly, over here, scheduled events. So these would be your PM schedules, but in our system, it's not just PMs. You can actually schedule any work order type. So you can limit this to only certain work order types. For instance, I've turned off corrective maintenance work orders. You tend to not schedule those into the future. They're more reactive. So I've turned that off so it doesn't appear in my list, but you can adjust this list as you see fit. So if we have an upcoming project or any sort of planned maintenance that's not necessarily part of the PM, we can schedule that all out in advance. If it's recurring, we can handle that. If it's a one-time event, we can handle that as well. So that's the major difference here, is you can schedule any work order type. We track AEM, as everyone should nowadays. So if it is an AEM schedule, this is where you set it at the schedule level. Of course, we also can set it at the equipment type and the model levels as eligible or not eligible, who reviewed it. We even have a built-in review process where through the work orders, you can track your entire scaling of what's allowed and what's not. So the forms that you fill out to determine if it can be put under AEM, we can track right inside of our system. And then you can do all of your reporting out of AIMS instead of pulling reports from different systems or tracking it in Excel. Last big piece in here is warranty. Warranties we treat like a contract because essentially it is. It's a contract typically from the manufacturer to you that they are going to support this equipment either through parts or labor or both for a period of time. So because of that, it's not just a simple date field and maybe some notes. We have dates and notes, what's covered with actual drop downs you can choose, response time, you can even put in the actual service hours for each day of the week, what's covered. On top of that, if it's under an active warranty, we track the labor and materials that are covered under the warranty separately. So they won't be lumped in with your in-house charges, they won't be lumped in with contract charges, they're their own category. Very easy way to add those labor and material lines by simply checking a checkbox that it's a warranty line. Once you do that, we separate all the costs out so you can track the warranty costs separate from contract, separate from in-house costs. So we treat them a little bit differently. The last piece here is this reviewer field. For very critical pieces of equipment that you really care about when the warranty ends, you can actually turn on automatic notifications. What this means is when this review date passes, so on 10/1 of this year, John Smith is going to get an automatic email that says this warranty is expiring. Take a look. Maybe you need to put it under contract, maybe you need to extend the warranty. It's up to you to determine which ones you want turned on. Obviously, you wouldn't turn them all on. You don't need to be emailing people thousands of emails as things come out of warranty. But for your critical equipment, you absolutely will want to use this. And it's just an automatic notification when that date passes. You don't have to run reports looking 3 months in the future. This will happen automatically. Talking about these next two tabs, we're actually going to talk about customizable fields. So our IS screen can be as simple or as complicated as you would like it to be. We have over 165 IS fields available, and you only see the ones that you want to see. There's a whole setup screen. You go in and just turn the fields on and off very quickly. So if I wanted to add MAC addresses to my wired section here, I come over to System Setup. I go to Setup IS, and then in my wired section here, I simply find MAC address and turn that on. As soon as I save this screen and go back there, it's going to automatically show up. So now I can start adding MAC addresses. So it's very easy to customize this screen. You only see the fields that you want to see. And then of course you can add custom fields also. So if somehow there's a field we don't already track, you can simply add it and it all functions the same way. It's very easy to use the IS, and you'll only see the fields that you care about that are critical to your organization and you want to track. Over here at Expansion, kind of the same thing, but you have even more customizations. Expansion is our version of user-defined fields. You can group these any way you want. You can come down here and add a new field set. Field set's simply a frame. Inside of each frame, you can add new fields. As many different fields as you want, as many different types as you want, you can add. Every single field that you add, you can make it required, and you can choose to add it to the header. Adding it to the header is this top section. It's the customizable section of the screen. So as I'm clicking through all these tabs, this section stays the same. Replacement date, battery model, and warranty support hours are actually all user-defined fields that I've shown in my header. So I think they're critical, they're things we want to track. So there's a lot of customizing you can do to this software. It's still very easily maintained. It's very easy for us to update. When you add something to the header, we don't move it. It's still here, it's just in both spots now. That allows us to easily do upgrades without having to worry about breaking your screens, because all you're doing is turning on a view to an existing field. It's not a custom screen for you that we can't manage. And that's an important distinction. Last thing I want to talk about in equipment before we move on are global options. So we have, if you come over here to our list view, this is just an internal list of all the equipment. You can filter it down, of course, change the columns, add, remove columns, drag things around. It's probably fairly standard functionality. By going up here and hitting this replace button, it turns it into a find replace screen. So now I can come out here and say, find a particular manufacturer. I can do a model, I can update a serial number, do whatever I need to do, and simply just check all the ones that apply. And I can preview those changes and then update them, which will push all of the changes out. So it's a very quick, easy way to find or replace almost any field that we have. so that you can make mass changes to the software. These are all, of course, tracked in the audit trail. So it'll say who did it, what screen they did it from, what change was made. So if there is a mistake, somebody did something they weren't supposed to, even with the preview screen there, if they just kind of clicked through it quickly, we have the audit trail, we can recover that information. The last big one, and this one is huge, is the scheduled event change tool. So scheduled events, again, are our PM schedules, among other work order types. This is a way for you to change those in bulk. So if you're putting something on an AEM schedule and you want to change those, you can look for that model, you can look for that procedure, and from there, it'll show you all the different ones. You can check which ones apply, and then you can update anything about them. This is truly a full update. So if you just want to line up all your schedules to the first day of the month, we even have an option for that. You want everything to come out on the first day of the month and be due at the end of the month. You can actually use this tool to do that. If you need to make it a 2-year instead of a 1 year, because you put it on an AEM schedule, you can do that here as well in bulk. So this is a very, very powerful tool to make those sort of changes. And the last piece of this that's actually my favorite is this auto calculate checkbox. This has to do with forecasting. So when you're looking at your team and trying to forecast when PMs are going to come out so that everyone has time to get them done, you're doing that workload balancing. If you're using estimates that are not accurate, your forecast is inaccurate. I'm sure some of you have experienced this over time where you thought you could get it all done. Things are taking longer than you thought they were going to or than historically they have, and you weren't able to get them done in time. Now you're either paying overtime, things are late, whatever it might be, you're scrambling to get those things done. And that all stems from estimates. Estimate is what the forecasting tools use to determine if you have time to get it done. This will auto-calculate your estimates based on prior usage. So you can go in here and say, for each equipment or for the equipment type as a whole or for the entire model, I want to auto-calculate the estimated hours based on prior usage. So if I think it's going to take a half hour, or the manufacturer says it's going to take a half hour, but because of travel distance or accessibility issues, it's actually taking my team 45 minutes apiece. Not a big deal if you have 10, a very big deal if you have 300. That extra 15 minutes apiece is going to add a lot of time to your forecast that you're not expecting because you still have that original 30-minute estimate in there. This is going to auto-calculate that and update all of those for you. So it's a very, very neat way to keep your forecasts much more accurate and allow the software to do the work for you, so you don't have to go and figure all the estimates out yourselves and redo them. This will do it for each procedure, each tag, and do the update for you all at once. All right, moving on to work orders. Work orders has a lot of the same features. So it has the critical messages up top. There are custom critical messages. I didn't show that in equipment. It actually does affect equipment as well. So there are actually custom critical messages that you can set up yourself to trigger off different events. So it can trigger off an equipment status. If the equipment's retired and you're looking at an open work order, that might be important information. You can actually have that show up top that says the equipment is retired. It'll show up on any work order that has a retired piece of equipment on it automatically. In this case, I have a decontamination form. This is an AIMS feature here that you can turn on or not, that basically when the work order is submitted, you can have the clinical person say whether or not the equipment has been decontaminated. So if there's bodily fluids or there's chemicals or something that the tech shouldn't touch that until it's cleaned, you can have them fill this form out. If it should have been cleaned and it wasn't, you can have this nice red message up top telling the tech that that is not a safe piece of equipment to touch yet. So they need to clean it before you let your staff go up there and take care of it. So that's one example of a custom critical messages. There's a lot more obviously you can do with that. You have your pictures on screen, you have customizable headers. All of that is the same as the equipment control. So some of the advantages here, and there are a lot of them, is there's one very obvious right here in the middle of the screen, other open work orders. Before my tech goes up to look at this piece of equipment, they should know every single work order that's open for that. It doesn't do me any good to have them walk all the way up there, get access to it, do a PM or do a corrective, just to come back to the desk and find out, oops, there's another one. That doesn't help you a whole lot. It also doesn't help you if it just announces it when the new work order is created. Most of you, your techs are not going to create work orders. They're either going to come in through an automated system, you're going to have a dispatcher, you're going to have an admin that is going to be creating those work orders for the most part. So some sort of pop-up right when the work order is created isn't super helpful either. This is very obvious, very visible from every single work order for this piece of equipment will have this tab. So I can click on this, I can see the other open work orders. I can export them. It's actually filtered right now by my home screen filter, so I'm not seeing everything. I'm only seeing the ones in a particular facility right now. So in this case, there are actually no other open work orders for this one in my location. So there's ways to see that information, make it very visible, again, just like all these other messages. One thing I also didn't mention over in equipment, these aren't just static messages. So if something's under contract, you can actually see the contract details. I get a phone number here as well. So if I need to call them and I'm using my phone, you can just tap right on this little phone number. It'll start calling them and you can schedule them to come out, whatever it is you need to do when you talk to your vendor, if it's covered under contract. I know what's included. I know when the contract expires. There's a lot of very helpful information here. If I have security rights, I can go and visit this if I want even more information. It'll take me right to the contract. Same thing with warranty. So warranty, you're going to see a lot more information. You'll see what's covered, what the dates are, what the service hours are. So you just get a lot more information on both of those when you go to look at them. And the last one is equipment down. This one's also clickable. It'll show you the actual work order where this is marked down. This is a workflow we'll look at in just a couple minutes here of how you get this status set. So I know on this particular work order, it's marked as down. Again, I can jump to this work order and we can go see why it's down and hopefully fix it and get it back up. One of the other features that I didn't show you over at equipment, although it does exist there, it's probably more useful here, is the ability to multi-assign. So things like service department, like I said, this is a clinical facilities radiology, you can see things in here. So if this is something that multiple teams have to work on, I can multi-assign departments. I can also multi-assign employees. So if multiple people have to work on this, I can do that. It's a project. So as you guys, most of you probably had to create extra ICUs during COVID, that was a multi-team effort. There's facilities work involved, there's biomed work, there's IT work. Everyone in your hospital pretty much had to get involved with helping to create those spaces and making them new ICUs with negative pressures and all of the things that go into that. You guys know better than I do. So you can assign, create that work order, track all of it, assign all the different people, assign your multiple teams, and it all works very well. If you do have teams assigned, right from here, you can actually view the team members. So in this case, I had defibrillators and I had defibrillator techs and I had electricians, and I can see those teams that I've assigned also. Again, we'll look at teams a little bit later towards the end. So it says defibrillator on there, but I can just, with one click, I can see who those people are. So I know now which team I've assigned to handle this particular request. Over here on the update tab, the improvements we've made for workflows here are labor's very quick and easy. So when I go to apply labor, it defaults me in, it defaults today in. I can quickly fill out our coded response field. This is critical field here that's reportable. It's not free text. So if I put changed belts, I can report off of that because it's a coded field. I don't have to worry about somebody misspelling it or putting changed instead of changed. I just choose this from a report and it finds every single one of them. I can make it billable. I can quickly add test equipment. Most of this is probably done through an interface more often than not nowadays. So you're going to interface with one of the many companies out there, Fluke or BC Group or one of those. We interface with pretty much all of them. So most of the test equipment comes through there. Actually, you can do it manually this way. We're seeing less and less of that, of course, as interfaces become bigger. And then lastly, if it's under contract, I can add contract time. I can add Non-contract time, vendor time, so this would be more billable work, but here's also where you're going to see that warranty checkbox. So if it's covered under warranty versus our credit card, I can check that, and as I mentioned before, it'll split the costs out when we do our reporting. So very quick and easy to add your labor. If you do have lines that are very similar, you can actually even duplicate those lines. There's a duplicate button over here, and then just edit it and make the few changes you need to do. So if multiple people were kind of working on it together, you could have one person just enter it and duplicate it and change the person, basically. And you can very quickly get those other labor lines in a matter of seconds. The bigger changes actually came at materials. While labor is always applied, materials aren't applied enough. This is a huge expense that we find isn't tracked as often as it should be, because it's a lot of work. To track your parts is a lot of work. To even maintain the parts list is a lot of work. So what we've done here, when you go to apply materials to this work order, it obviously knows which tag is on it. It knows the manufacturer, model, and the equipment type. So what's going to happen down here is you're going to see this linked parts section. This is going to look at this model of equipment and find any part that's been used on any work order for this model. You can specifically link them. That's a little bit overhead that many people don't do, but when you're first creating the model, if you also add the parts and link them, you'll see the linked parts in here as well. Not used as often, but it really puts those right at the top because those are the ones that are verified essentially. These could have been fat fingered technically in the past, but we make it very visible here. So if I'm looking for a battery, this is the battery that's right up here on top. It's been used before. I simply click the plus. It puts my cursor in the quantity. I hit my 1, I hit save. So I click the plus, enter 1, click save. That's it. That's how I've added, and I know it's the correct part because it's the one that we always use on this model. Same thing over here on part kits. So you can apply a part kit. What's going to happen here is I can put the part kit, I put my 1, and I hit save. Now, instead of adding just the part kit, it's actually going to split the parts out. So when it splits the parts out, if I didn't need both modules, I only needed one, I can simply edit this and reduce the quantity or remove it completely if I didn't use it. But it's a way to quickly get all of the parts on there. So if your part kit has 7 different parts on it or 12 different parts on it, you apply one part kit, it puts all 12 on there, and then you can edit if you need to. It's going to pull in the correct cost for each one. So down here at the bottom, when we're looking at our totals, I know my correct total at the bottom. So I have $175.75 with using quick math there, and that's my total there as well. So right at the bottom, I get my totals. I can see that they're accurate, and I know for this particular work order, it's cost me $198.25. So it's quick and easy to get those parts in there. The linked parts section, which also shows the used parts and used part kits, is incredibly important. It's going to increase accuracy and reduce time that it takes to get the proper results onto your work orders. Now you have much more accurate reporting. Just a couple clicks and you know it's the right part. Talking about downtime, this equipment down message, as I mentioned, triggers off of simply 2 checkboxes. There's a couple of accompanying date fields, but they default. So what happens with downtime is when a work order comes in, we don't allow the clinical person to enter if it's down or if it's urgent, because most of the time everything's down and everything's urgent. So it doesn't matter what it is. If there's a leak, dripping faucet, it's going to annoy them and they're going to say it's urgent. Is it really urgent? I guess that's up to your team to decide. So we don't typically give them access to these fields for that reason. Once they have access to it, everything becomes critical. However, when the tech gets on site, they verify that yes, it is down. It wasn't just user error or something like that. When they check this checkbox, it is going to default the date to the request date of the work order. They can change it, they can backdate it, or they can do whatever they need to do. But essentially, by defaulting to the request date, you're verifying that it was down when they called or when they submitted the work order. When it comes back online, they finish the work and they bring it all back up, do the self-test, whatever it might be. They verify it's working. All they have to do is click this checkbox and it'll default to the exact date and time they set the checkbox. If they aren't working real time, they can backdate this as well. So if I'm entering my time the next day or the next week, if you let them get away with that, they could backdate this to the close date of the work order as well. That's why we give them access to the dates. So if they're working real time, they check one box. When they're done, they check the other. 2 check boxes, and you have much more accurate downtime. It's tracked in hours right on screen. This was down for 214 hours. We do take into account the hours of operation. So if it is for an offsite thing that maybe closes down 5, 6 o'clock, after 6 o'clock, the hours stop counting against you until the next morning when it reopens. So if you're setting your department or your equipment hours of operation, it does take that into account. If it couldn't be used for a patient, it's not down. It's only down during work hours, essentially. So it's smart enough to take all of that into account and give you your calculation. So essentially, anything marked as down that's not back online will give you the message of equipment down automatically. That's where that flag comes from. You can report on things that are down, things that have been down that are back online. You can total up the downtime hours to see how you're affecting your departments. There's a lot now you can do with that information with 2 tiny little checkboxes in your workflow. Two more things here in work orders. Number 1, we have some of the same tools here. So in the work order list view, much like the equipment list view, we have find replace. So you can come out here and update statuses, update types, do whatever you need to do for this equipment to do a bulk update to it. So you have your find replace. On top of that, we also have a batch update and close. So if on these work orders, once I select some, if on these work orders, I want to apply labor, even materials, fill out a procedure, add notes, I can do all of that here, and it just puts it on all of them. So if I put a labor line for a half hour, it'll put a half hour on each one of them. I can either then update it and leave it open, essentially, or leave it in the status it's in, or I can update and close it. So it'll apply all of these things and either leave it in the status it's in or close it. You have both of those options from here. So you can both close your work orders. If you're going out and doing 100 infusion pumps, you're going to want to batch close those. You don't want to hit every single work order to put your half hour on it, whatever it takes you to do them. So you can come here, find them all, and close them all at once, or at least close all the past ones. And then for the failed ones, of course, you should be documenting why they failed and your remediation steps on those work orders. So those might be the one-offs. But for the 99 of the 100 that passed, you can bulk close them in this fashion. Very, very easy to do. Same labor and material screens. There's no difference in any of these screens from a regular work order. We make it very simple. And then, of course, you can also batch open work orders. So if we have a whole bunch of incoming inspections or whatever reason you need to batch open work orders, you can do that as well. So you can search for tags, you can add tags individually, it depends on your purpose for it. You know, if it's 5 or 6 tags, you just want to do it quickly, you can simply type them in and hit the plus button. If it's, again, initial inspections for 100 incoming devices that all match, you of course will want to use the search button and do a multi-select, unless you really like typing numbers. So this is just a quick way to open a whole bunch of work orders, all the same fields pretty much on the work order control. It just allows you to do it automatically at once. So a lot of bulk tools to, again, help your team out, try to reduce time in the system. This isn't, we love our software. We don't want you in it unless you have to be. Your tech should be out fixing equipment. They shouldn't be playing around inside of my software. So my job is to get them in and out as quickly as possible to give all of you the reporting that you need to do what you need to do to report your financials, prove your workload, anything you need to do, you should be able to do, but you shouldn't be paying your techs to sit inside of my software for 2 hours a day to give you that information. So all of these tools and workflows are designed to speed everything up and make it more accurate. The last thing, anyone who saw it on the side here, is scheduled events. These are non-tagged scheduled events. So for those of you facilities teams out there that might be watching this, you can schedule your area PMs. So if you need to go PM a floor or a room or whatever it might be, you can actually schedule that as a PM schedule. If you just have projects, you can schedule those as well. It's pretty much the exact same screen as the equipment one, except instead of tag information, it's location information. So you can still set it up. You can choose your work order type. You can choose your procedure. There's nothing different here, except it's not tagged. Tagged ones are set up in the equipment control. Everything else is identical, with the exception of there's no AEM checkbox because it's not equipment. There's no E for the AEM. So because of that, obviously we don't need that particular setting, but the rest of it is exactly the same. You can schedule these out as one-time events, as recurring projects, and have these things pop up as work orders at their intended time, exactly when you want them to. In both cases, I didn't mention this bottom right section here. Not everyone is in a place with seasons that affect what you do. I happen to live in Michigan. We have many seasons, more than 4, it seems like, each year. So in the summer, for instance, we don't tend to take care of snow. In the winter, we don't service air handlers, air conditioners in my case. There's just things you don't do different seasons. This allows you to make it a monthly event, but turn it off for certain months of the year. So if that affects you, if you have use for that, we do allow for that in our system as well. So these are useful for everyone, not just facilities teams. You all have projects to do that are non-equipment related, like I said, especially during coming into COVID, and now even leaving COVID, as you're breaking down those ICU rooms, you're still involved. You still have to get your equipment and do whatever it is, put it back where it came from, whatever it might be. So you can schedule those things out so they do show up in your workload reports now. So that covers the equipment and work order workflows. We'll touch back on those a few times talking about the rest of this, but I want to show you other places where some things are set up. So just generically now, some of the other things that we've done, you've actually seen me use a couple of these so far, but we have navigation. Again, my goal is to speed up use of this system. To that end, I want you to jump around as quickly as possible to exactly where you need to go. So up here, we have breadcrumbs. These save inside the database. There are 50 of them that save against my username. If I log in from another device, let's say I open up and work on a tablet, I still have my history up here where I can click on this and go to it, or in this case, tap on it because it's a tablet. Or I can go here and I can click on something and jump right back to it. So if I want to say, what was that part I was looking at? It's right here. I can click on it and I can go right to this part and look at it. Oh, it's an absorber dome, 1,500 bucks. We have 8 of them on hand. It moves that to the end because that's the last one I've looked at, and it keeps my history. So you can scroll back through and see a history of them in here. And like I said, the important part is it saves inside the database so that if I log in, if I go on vacation for 2 weeks, I can still come back and know exactly the last work order I was working on. So if anyone has any questions, it's right there in my history. So that's one way of navigating around. Simple click and go is all it is. Up top here, if you saw it, there's a global go-to button. This is probably more of an admin tool. So those, if any admins are watching this, or any of you that have worked with your admins, constantly people are coming up to them and saying, hey, can you look at this piece of equipment, or can you look at this work order or this contract? And they have to jump right to it. This is the way to do that. So if somebody walks up and says, hey, I'm having trouble with work order 4,000, can you take a look at it? You simply type WO:4000 and it'll jump you right to that work order. It'll switch components and take you right to the record. How you know what's allowed? If you hover over it, you'll see a series of different prefixes that we allow depending on your preference. Some people will find some things easier to remember versus others, so we give you a lovely variety of options there. So you can jump to a work order, equipment. If you only have the serial number, so you know that happens all the time, you can actually type in the serial number and jump right to the equipment also. A part number, a contract, whether you use the vendor contract number or our contract number, doesn't matter, you can jump right to it as well. So there's a variety of ways to jump around the system pretty instantly, as a matter of fact. It'll jump you right to it and switch components. You saw me switch from parts to work orders just now. So that's another navigational tool. Any grid, any of these grids that you've seen throughout the system, you've seen this little button on the side. This is a go-to button. So whether it's the home screen or the equipment list view or even the equipment history log, Every single one of these has a go-to button. You simply click on it and it took me right to 3392. So that's another way. There's a lot of ways navigating around the system. Of course, we have our find screens. So you can search for something and jump to it there as well. This find screen is also customizable, another customizable piece. If there's fields on here you never use, turn them off. We let you turn those fields off. If it's something you're never going to search on, I'm never going to search on asset number because it's just our accounting number for it and we don't use it. You simply turn it off, it's off my screen already. As soon as you come back to the screen, it's gone. So you can customize the search screen even to speed up use of this particular screen also, because it's used constantly. So there are a lot of ways to jump around the system. Last one is probably my favorite. So if you haven't seen, we do have built-in chat. So anyone who's logged in, you can chat with them, and right inside the system, it saves inside the database. And using something like chat, if you need help with something, you can actually paste them a link right to this particular record. So if I copy that, you're going to see the message over here that says link to work order 3392 is copied to the clipboard. What will happen then when they load up that link, instead of taking them to their home screen, they're going to log in and come right to this record. You can also, through the tools menu, generate an emailed link. This will open up your email, Outlook in my case, and start an email. Puts the link in, puts a little information about the work order. I simply type in the address and hit send, and it'll send that link off to somebody else, and they can take a look at it at their leisure at that point. So that's a way to get someone into the system and directly to the record so they don't have to log in, go to the component, find the search, type in the number, the multiple steps you have to do that are, it's muscle memory at this point. You're doing it automatically. We're trying to make that even faster. Just send them a link and they'll go right to it. So those are navigational improvements that we've made as well. This next one is actually work order related, but I'm going to show you it somewhere else because I want to show you the setup for it, as I mentioned. We have what are called area assignments. So using this particular tool, you can say that for my clinical engineering team, inside of a particular facility, anything in a particular area, or in this case, any of these equipment types in a particular area, are going to automatically be assigned to Beth Allison. So this is an automatic assignment piece. So I can see that she already has a bunch of things that are auto-assigned to her just based on essentially equipment type and location. Maybe she's the only one that works there, so it's everything for that location, and you don't have to split it out by equipment type. You can get very granular in here. So you can say anything inside of this particular cost center that is of also in a building or particular equipment type or job type. So you can kind of multi-layer these things in and come up with some pretty sophisticated options for auto-assigning work orders as they come in. So when they're submitted through EasyNet, they're going to automatically be assigned to somebody. On top of that, based on the employee's setup, they can also automatically be messaged to them. Now, I use the word message. We used to call it paging in the younger versions of AIMS, or the older versions of AIMS, I guess. And what paging was, it wasn't necessarily to a pager. It could have been a text message to a phone, an email to an email address. There are a variety of ways. All those happen here as well. So if you're still using old school pagers, we can page to those. Most things now are going text message or email, or any combination thereof. So over here in data managers, if we take a look at our employees, this is where you can set up their different devices. So in my case, I have my email address, a mobile, the mobile device would be a text message, of course, and then which fields I want to show up when that work order comes to me. You don't have to set this up employee by employee. Some of you have hundreds of employees. We, of course, don't want to make you do that. There's a global option for setting this up as well. So everyone can get the same set of fields. Then if somebody wants something different, you can edit just them. So those work in conjunction with work orders. I wanted to show you the setup versus the actual work order, because on the work order, it just sets the assigned employee automatically is really the goal there. And that does work with teams. You can set up teams as well, and they'll be automatically assigned. And each member of the team will get the email based on, or text message based on their setup in here. So you can have a whole team that's assigned and messaged out automatically as well. You can, of course, always manually message something. So if you want to change the assignment to somebody else and message them and tell them why, there's a send message button right up here. You can send them additional instructions. This will just show right up at the top of the email. So you can say, hey, I reassigned this to you for whatever reason. Take a look and let me know if you can handle it. And then you send the message. It'll text out or email out or whatever your chosen method is at that point. So again, we're trying to automate some of this stuff. So that's the automatic assignment and messaging piece. Some huge improvements that aren't necessarily workflow related, but are critical to keeping things separate. Over here in Data Managers, we have a concept called assignment profiles. Assignment profiles are a way for you to limit who has access to what, not only the records themselves, but the actual drop downs. And I think this is what makes us a little bit different. Most systems have a way where when you log in, you can't see certain things. So if I'm biomed tech, I can't see facilities and so on. What ours does a little bit differently and better, I think, is we can also start to limit the actual drop downs. So when I log in as a biomed tech, I only have access to certain equipment types. I'm not going to see my air handler units or beds in this case. I know some of you biomed teams do beds. I won't see IT information or fire doors. I can really limit what they see, and I only ever have to set this up once. And then my employee, I just choose which assignment profile they're a part of, and these automatically take effect for each of those employees. So this is a way to really customize the system. So when my biomed techs log in, they see one version of AIMS. When the facilities techs log in, they see another. As an admin, I can now report on both. Each team thinks they have their own database and they're happy. But now, as a reporting group, I have access to both and I can report on both at the same time. So it's very, very critical to set this up. I told you I'd show you teams. I'll show you that quickly because there's really not much to it. We try to make it very simple. So you choose your team name. If they have a group email, you can set that up. Otherwise, it'll just use their individual emails. And then you simply choose the people. That might seem silly to show you because it is so easy, but there's a little bit more to it. Because over here, as a manager, I can just assign a manager to a team. As team members change, which they do probably more frequently than a manager, I don't have to come back here and touch this. I simply go switch the team members out in the team, and it affects this automatically. It works with the manager home screen charts. It'll show all of your team members. So if this literally was just a team, my home screen would look the same. It would still show me individually all of my different team members. So the team concept is used throughout the software to really be a time saver. So you can just assign it to the team. And if the teams change, you just simply swap them in and out on that very simple team screen. That's the point. Right along with that, because employees can be difficult to set up, there's a lot of different settings that can affect them. We have a global employee settings as well. So I can have one set of information here for my techs, another set for my lead techs, managers, facility managers, regional managers, whatever you have. Each can have their own set of settings of the way the software works for them. One in particular I want to highlight is this work order reopen period. You don't necessarily want your techs going back 2 months ago, things you've reported on and submitted those reports, and reopening those work orders. You can limit that using this option. You can limit them to same day only. If they screwed their time up or materials entering, they can fix it today. If it's past that, they have to go to their lead, who I've set up for 7 days. So for a week, they can open it. Maybe your managers get 2 weeks or a month. So per level of employee, you can actually set up these limitations of how they're going to use the software. For instance, if you had any sort of admin role who is not a tech, they're not going to go out on the floor and actually do anything, you would not want to turn this top option on. Because if they create a work order, they're creating it for someone else 100% of the time. So it's not going to automatically assign them on a new work order. However, my techs, if someone grabs them by the shirt sleeve when they're walking by, they will create work orders. And to have them automatically assigned to a work order they're created saves them a step. So you can really set it up instead of just turning it on for everyone or off for everyone, or turning it on one employee at a time, which is very tedious to maintain. You set it up once, and again, just assign this profile to the techs or to the employees. So there's things like that, set up options that you set them up once, and then as you make changes in the future, you add or remove team members. All I'm doing, again, if they're a tech, I choose technician. and I don't have to set anything else up for them. So it's a time saving for your admins who do have to manage these lists of details, employees or equipment types or whatever they might be. Last couple big ones here. We have about 10 minutes left. Last couple big ones. This is just now coming into its prominence here, but over here in system setup, we have a tool called automation. This is going to allow you to have automated workflows that you can set up and manage. You don't have to go back to us and ask for enhancements because you want to change the way it works, or you want to automate some function because you want it to happen every time. This allows you to set that up on your own. So for instance, I have one set up here. This is a very simple example of, on a work order, whenever I set a failure from blank to any of these selected values, so abuse or damage, canceled, no problem found, operator error, or recall. Of course, I'd probably also include vandalism in there. If any of those failures are set on the work order, meaning my tech looked at it, they fixed whatever the problem was, or in some of those cases didn't fix because there was no problem, I automatically want to set this PM preventable field to no. You can't do a PM to prevent abuse or to prevent operator error. Doing more PMs doesn't fix that problem or prevent that problem. This is an important field. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of it if you're not using something similar to it for your AEM scheduling right now. So you should be checking things that are PM preventable, especially if it's on an AEM schedule, to see if maybe you need to take it off. If you're having a lot of PM preventable failures, this is a very important field to fill out, and we can fill it out automatically using a standard workflow. So when I fill out failure, it'll set this for me. And you can set it to yes for others, of course. Any field that's in here, you could update. You can trigger these things off a variety of components. The two we have fully developed right now are labor and work orders. Equipment will be in the next 2 weeks. So these all interact. So the trigger could actually be a labor entry, and I could update something on the work order. On top of that, you can have multiple actions. So maybe I want to update this to a certain thing, and I also want to notify the assigned employees. Then I can type in the message I want to send them, or I could notify their managers. Whoever's assigned, it'll automatically notify their managers. This is all automated, so I only have to set this up once. With this other contact, you can actually contact somebody outside of your CMMS. So if you needed to contact the C-suite or finance person or whomever, a purchaser, whatever it might be, you can contact them without having to add them into the system. You just put their contact information. Again, this could be a phone number, an email address. It'll send a text or an email based on how you enter it, and whatever message you want to send them. And you can add as many of these actions as you want. So with one trigger, you can really do a whole lot of things all at once. So for instance, if you retire, if you change the status of a piece of equipment to retired, I could close out work orders. I could notify all the people that they were closed because we retired the equipment. There's a huge variety of things you could do literally by changing the status of a piece of equipment. You change the status, we could close out a dozen work orders and email all of the requesters of those work orders and tell them why we're not going to fix it. I could email the department head, letting them know what's going on, that they're not going to get it back, with literally changing the status of the equipment. It's an incredibly powerful tool. The options are limitless. What we can do with this is just a matter of getting everything in, all the different functionality that people are going to be requesting for it. So we're starting out small and we'll build this over time, but it's a very, very powerful tool already. I've been talking about EasyNet. That's our web request system. This form can be as simple or as complicated as you want. I have it very simple right now, so it defaults in all of my information. I put the problem field in. If you can get a tag number out of them, which is iffy in a lot of places, you can do that. If you don't even want to try, you can actually just take this whole section out as well. So you can customize this screen and remove fields and remove whole sections if you want. And then of course you can see that decontamination form here as well. Most of you won't use this. This is very big with our European customers. I think every single one of them without fail uses this feature. It doesn't seem to be as big here in the States for some reason, but I really like the feature and we've expanded it pretty well in AIMS 3. So if you don't want that, turn it off. You have full access to the screen, like I said, so you can customize the fields and simply just turn off the decontamination form. It's very easy to do, and then it's gone off your screen. So that's how hard it is to change the screen around. Very, very simple. Of course, they can look up work orders they've submitted. If they need to look up equipment information, they can do that as well, if you give them rights to access these things. Very simple screen. Now, one neat part about this, I wish I could show on an online demo, but I can't, is scanning. We have the ability for you to scan a QR barcode and have it automatically open up EasyNet from whatever device you're on, typically a smartphone or a tablet if you're using the phone or the camera on that to scan. It'll take you to EasyNet automatically. It caches all this information, so it should load all this in, and it loads in the tag number that you scanned automatically as well and all of the tag information. So essentially everything from here down loads from the tag number. So when this screen loads up using that scan feature, all these 3 fields are filled, all this information is filled. I simply type out the problem, hit submit. 1 field submission if you use these little scan tags that we have. It's a very, very neat workflow. Not widely used yet, it's relatively new, but it's very, very useful. We have customers that have been using it now for the last year already. So it's a very neat feature for scanning tags and opening up work orders fairly instantly with it. All right, last few minutes here, I want to spend on reporting. So reporting is obviously a big thing. I've shown you a lot of charts and stuff already and all the notifications on screen. That's useful when you're using it, not quite as useful if you need to actually get reports out. So another button that is on basically every single one of these grids is an export. Still, the #1 request we get is, can I get that information in Excel? It's neat that it's in a chart that's useful real time, but to actually use the data, we need it in Excel. So that is an export on every single one of these. It's on every list view. If we go to equipment list view, you're going to see the same button there. There's a parts list view, a contracts list view. Everything has a list view you can export to Excel. So that's #1. It'll use whatever filters you set as well. So if I filter my list down to look at just a certain equipment type or a certain model, and then I hit export, that's what I'm going to get on my export. So that's a quick, easy way to get data out. It's one of the most used ways because it's so quick and easy. Another way, we do have an actual export over here. The advantage of the export is you get more options. So I now have detailed summary report modes. I can include grand totals. I can create a header and a footer. So anyone familiar, especially with Excel, you can create left, center, right headers and footers. So once this comes out with whatever I've selected, I can include labor and materials. I'll have a much better view of, in this case, work orders or my scheduled events or whatever it is I'm exporting. So it's the same thing. It's still going to throw it out to Excel. You can still save and load macros like any other report. This just gives you a little more power behind it. And then, of course, you can still filter any field to do any sort of filters you want. So if you want just things requested in the last week or the last day, you can do that as well, very simply. So that's a couple of the major ways of doing reports. We have a whole reporting section. We partner with Telerik to do our reports. So every customer gets a report designer tool. It's included. So you can customize any report in the system. You can create your own. You can customize our pre-builts. So one of your options here is pre-built. So I can come out here and say, you know what, I need a completed work order report. It's included in the system. Choose the component or components that it applies to, and I can save it. So I now have this new report down here. I can hit the button and I can view it. What's neat about Telerik is it's all editable on screen. So I can change whatever I want on screen. So if I wanted to sort by cost center, I can do that. I can change my date ranges. There's a lot of different things I can do with this right on the fly. And as I make changes, report updates automatically. Very powerful reporting tool. You have full rights to every report that comes with our system, and you can edit them yourselves if you want to change. You don't have to come to us and wait for us to do an enhancement or anything like that. It's fully customizable. And that's it. I think we're out of time.